Welcome to the Brain Body Fit podcast. I'm Dr. Jerome Rerucha, and I'm here to help you cut through the noise of fads and quick fixes and focus on proven strategies for optimizing your health and peak performance. Join me as we explore regeneration, anti-aging breakthroughs, nutrition, and the power of improving your physical and mental strength to unlock your brain and body's full potential. Welcome to the Brain Body Fit podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Dr. Jerome Rerucha, and today we have with us Mark McAfee. So he has an incredible resume. I'm just going to do a brief intro here, but Mark is going to be talking to us about raw dairy. I could not have found anybody better. He has so much experience as an educational expert, preclinical work that we're going to get into prior to this and what motivated him to be literally the world's largest raw dairy farmer at this point, and he takes it and sets the standard. So Mark McAfee, chairman and founder of the Raw Milk Institute and CEO of Raw Farms. Mark, welcome.
I am overjoyed this morning to be meeting with a fellow educator. Good job, Doc.
Thanks. Yeah, and we do. With Brain Body Fit, we want to take that clinical evaluation, match it with performance enhancement, but food is the foundation of everything, whether we're trying to reverse aging, take people with comprehensive health problems, or if you're super healthy already, we want people to understand metabolism and get bigger, faster, stronger, leaner, and whatever your goals are. And food is the foundation of everything. And dairy has a huge premise, and it can be incredibly healthy. What we're going to learn today, the difference between regular store-bought pasteurized dairy, and there's a buzz about raw dairy. It never went away, but yet a lot of misinformation probably. People don't know where to go. They have some questions. And I know you're an expert on this topic. So we're going to let you run with it and just expand a little bit on your bio of current, show some of the products, to the audience of what we'll be talking about before we dive into science, research, and regulations.
Well, I'm going to be guided by you and your questions that you have. But just to give an overview, in California, this product right here is a top seller in all the natural food stores. The Sprout stores, Nugget markets, Lassen's markets. The gallon of raw milk blows out. We're constantly short. The stock is always being depleted, and they're out of stock because of the fact that people are so much in love with drinking raw milk, and it's working for them. We also have raw milk cream, which is incredibly bioactive because of the fact it's got 40% butterfat, and fat carries about 60% of the bioactives found in raw milk. So you can just think about the whole milk being 4%, and this is 40%. So you have 10 times more bioactives. And we'll talk about the word bioactives a little later. And then raw milk kefir, which is whole raw milk, which has been inoculated with 12 additional bacterium cultures on top of the hundreds that are already there. And it's never been cooked. So it's completely live, extremely probiotic, biodiverse, and also filled with a good lactose and other sugars found in raw milk. And it's very, very good for settling down the gut, especially if it's inflamed. So those are three of our products. We also have raw butter, and it's never been heated. And we also have raw cheeses, which have never been taken above body temperature, which makes it a truly raw type French cheese, which is filled with bioactives as well. Bioactives is a key point I like to make here because it's a world that goes far beyond nutrition. When you hear the FDA talking about there's no nutritional difference between pasteurized milk and raw milk, they're talking about the level of vitamins or the level of this or the level of fats or the level of proteins. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the bioactivity of them, the bioavailability of them, and the protein functionality of them, functional proteins. Those things are changed in pasteurization. And you can't get an FDA person or a pharma doctor person to talk about that because, one, they probably don't know about it. Number two, it really doesn't help their case much because the bioactives really drive the functional immune system adaptive and resilient properties of your gut microbiome. When you think about raw milk, this may be a little bit of a curveball. Think about breast milk. There's no argument anywhere in the world. The American Medical Association, the pediatricians, the World Health Organization, the Nurses Organization, the OBGYNs, the FDA, the CDFA, NIH, USDA, they all agree breastfeeding is fantastic because it has all these bioactives. But if you change from humans to cows, they all freaking freak out. So it's interesting that mammals carry these things in their milk to support the gut microbiome of the developing infant so that the baby can actually develop a gut microbiome, which is 80% of the immune system. And it's a phenomenal food for those, especially in America where we have a failing gut.
Yeah, and we're going to give some examples. So when I met Mark recently here, we got to talk, and we're going to get into his spectacular clinical experience prior to him really deep diving into the raw dairy situation. So we have this commonality that we know food is the foundation of everything. Here at Brain Body Fit, we know that gut-brain connection is epic, even though we're looking at details of all the systems of the body. So we take very detailed symptomatology, case histories. We treat the person, not the symptom. There is big generalities that we need to know, but it's so true. Whether you're the developing person or, unfortunately, you weren't breastfed, you're undernutrient as a developing person, we can still help people. So even when people were technically a very sick baby and they missed some of these steps, there's no substitute with implementing this stuff is early in life. Of course, human breast milk, but we also want to make very healthy mothers. So my job, I always tell people, I want to prevent more problems than I treat. And it starts with education. It starts with food. We tell everybody who's coming up to reproduction age of type of things where they say, hey, I'm just married, when you're going to start your family, and you have all those conversations. And we really press the issue of, it's like, man, let's really try to get you healthier. Let's eliminate these toxic processed foods. Let's really strengthen your body so you can be the healthiest mother, and all that innate that you can't even measure on lab tests, but the strength of the organism. And when we talk about neural development, gut development, immune development, it is such a big primary. So we're going to get into that a little bit here. And so as we go into this, like, gosh, where do you start? Like, people, again, you hear the rumors with raw dairy, you hear the misinformation in the mainstream media. We have the person here with Mark who's been all over the world, lecturing, going to health summits and conferences. We'll get into it in a flowchart method, but you're in Fresno, correct, area?
We are in Fresno. And I think to answer your big question, Fresno is right in the middle of California, where raw milk is legal and has always been legal. But listen up, everybody. This is a key point. Raw milk for human consumption, raw milk, human grade raw milk, is not the same as raw milk that goes off to be pasteurized. Completely different products. I cannot overemphasize that enough, Jerome. That people confuse, industry confuses, and the FDA has no standards for raw milk for human consumption. That all happens at the state level. The FDA is a federal level. So there are no standards at the FDA for raw milk for human consumption. They have none. They won't acknowledge it. They won't accept it. They won't understand it. It's not politically in their wherewithal. So raw milk for human consumption happens at the state level. And it's a very specific set of protocols you follow to get certain endpoints that are measurable. Low coliform levels, meaning that your milk is very sanitary. At the federal level, they don't even measure for coliforms because they're unlimited. You can have as many as it happens, because on the federal level, raw milk for pasteurization comes from all the neighborhood dairies together and gets commingled. And that must be pasteurized. It's filled with pathogens. A very high percent of the time, it has Listeria, E. coli, Salmonella, or Campylobacter in that milk, all commingled together, the good, bad, and the ugly, with super high bacteria counts. Raw milk for human consumption has extremely low levels of coliforms that are measured. So we're less than 10 coliforms. Right now, we're running 2 and 3. Coliforms are not pathogenic, but they're indicators of sanitation. They're telling you that you're just getting clean milk out of a healthy cow, not all the manure out there, okay? So super clean milk. And we on our farm, we have a pathogen lab on our farm, which I think we're going to get into a little bit. But we have a Thermo Fisher studio, a Quant 5 studio, we're run by a microbiologist full-time on our farm, doing up to 96 tests a day on all of the milk produced on our farm, batch by batch, product by product, to make sure that there is no escape of a potential needle in the haystack, a pathogenic bacteria found in our raw milk. And we get that data back in about 20 hours. So we're able to divert any milk that may have a pathogen. If a little Campylobacter comes through or something, that can be diverted to make cheese, which kills the pathogen over 60 days of aging. Or maybe butter, where butter is very low pH, very low water activity, low moisture, and it doesn't help propagate pathogenic bacteria, and it dies off because it's so acidic. So there are certain products we can make that are pathogen resistant versus the raw milk, which may not be as pathogen resistant. So completely different set of standards. So when you hear confusion or people saying raw milk is dangerous, they're correct if they're talking about raw milk for pasteurization. I love this quote from my friend, Dr. Bruce German, who is the founder of the International Milk Genomics Consortium at UC Davis, professor extraordinaire. He said, pasteurization is an 18th century solution to an 18th century problem. We could do a hell of a lot better. Those are words from a PhD that knows a lot about this stuff, and I've learned from him over the last 15 years. Well, we are doing a lot better. We know about water quality. We know about cow health. We understand how to feed a cow properly. We understand how to wash the udder and make sure the udder is completely clean before we put the milking machines on. So all we're getting is milk from a healthy cow. We know how to rapidly send that milk to a chiller where that milk can be reduced to about 36 degrees Fahrenheit in literally 2 to 3 minutes. And we know how to test the milk. So you're not talking about raw milk for pasteurization. You're talking about raw milk for human consumption. So get rid of the confusion and understand that there's different standards for raw milk for pasteurization and raw milk for human consumption, and they're worlds apart. You get into trouble when you combine those two together, when you mix them up or you don't follow those standards. That's where you have problems.
Yeah, great distinction. And I just want to reiterate, really drive that exclamation point home, that when we are talking raw dairy for human use, and just because you did say that there's no standards by the FDA, I don't want people to think that, oh, well, farmers can just do anything and there's nobody looking over their shoulders. That's absolutely not true. People like yourself, like if there was standards, you would so far exceed them. And you are teaching this globally. So you are such an influential person. Is we're going to back up a little bit, but that's a perfect segue into the big detail. I mean, you are like a living microbiologist, but it's one thing to have a PhD, teach the academia and research side of this, but somebody's got to do it. And, just like on this show, we've had other farmers, Frank King was on before, who sets the standard of raising healthy, clean meat. I mean, anybody who watched that's a whole different level. And that's what we're talking about here as well. So Mark, his family, his business, they are setting the standards in the world. We're going to learn about just how much educating they're providing, empowering other existing dairy farmers, creating new dairy farmers, because there is such an opportunity for people that maybe have had to close their farms or they were under the government standards of care and the system's somewhat against you, for instance. And this market is incredible because with the information age, we're being able to share more real information by the experts that are doing it. And this is their life passion. And so let's start a little bit. You weren't always a raw dairy farmer at this scale, even though you've done this for decades already. But I don't know how far you want to back up. We can start with your career in paramedics and again, what you saw, what you experienced. You did that for a long time. And being a paramedic is a hero to those at their greatest time of need. You did that for a long time, but you weren't just a great paramedic on the local team. I mean, you had a very significant influence. Again, you've always been an educator, so you kind of set the standard with education in paramedics. So if you want to even start slightly before that, you can, but otherwise, let's go over your prehistory prior to the hardcore dairy farming.
Well, I am extremely proud to say my mom delivered me through the birth canal, and I was breastfed.
It makes a difference.
Versus C-section and not breastfed. So there's a big discussion about how my microbiome began. So I'm very blessed to my mother that happened. But I grew up running around mostly naked half the time on a farm, running around in the dirt, playing with the animals. For a period of time, my parents had a dairy, and I learned to milk cows when I was 12, 13, and 14 years old. but that was about a 4 or 5 year period of time in my childhood. So I grew up on a dairy part of my childhood, but I've always been on the farm. My dad also did some work around the world. I lived in several places around the world as a teenager, but it was always back to the farms in Fresno. But my first job out of high school, I was a welder, and I saw a guy hit in the head up in the mountains, and the helicopter came in to save his life and take him away to the hospital. And I saw the helicopter land, and the paramedics got out with their orange jumpsuit, and the nurse, and the rotor wash and the excitement was just too much for this young teenager. And I said, I got to be on that helicopter. I want to be a paramedic, whatever it takes. So I made some money there at that mine as a welder. And then I went off, got my pre-med taken care of. And then I went and I became a certified paramedic. It was actually an EMT 1 first and an EMT 2 back when they had them, which was kind of a cardiac focused EKG technician. But then I became a certified paramedic with about 2,500 hours of training, a big internship here in Fresno. And then I taught paramedic medicine because I had pre-med. And I taught paramedic medicine for the health department for several years. And I did every role you can imagine, including on the helicopter. It was exciting. But I was also a recruiter. I was a paramedic educator. I was a preceptor. I was an operations manager for a while. There was lots of things I did in the paramedic world. All of that came to an abrupt stop in 1996. I'm 64 years old now. But in 1996, my grandparents passed away and left 1,000 acres of really good agricultural land for my brothers and I, and none of them wanted to farm. And I was kind of done with 24-hour shift and dead bodies. So my wife and I took over the family farming operations, but I did that very consciously. And the most conscious thing I did was, I do not want to be a commodity market person on a roller coaster, feast and famine like all of my neighbors here. So I wanted to sell and produce and serve people, not processors. And that was fundamentally pretty radical back in 1997, 1998 to do. But I said, you know what, let's do that. And some doors just really opened up for me. Altadena, the world's largest raw milk producing dairy in Los Angeles, closed in May of 1999. And I got to know them because I was always outreaching, how do I serve people? And there was a vacuum created where they were producing raw milk and they didn't have any more raw milk in LA, and people were starving for raw milk. They wanted it from me. So I was the closest little organic dairy to Los Angeles. So all of our milk was going to LA, and it's grown prolifically because of my interest in serving people, not the processor. So very, very important, that thing of taking care of humanity versus taking care of the processor. In America right now, we're losing 5.5 dairies a day because of overproduction of milk for the commodity markets and bankruptcies all over the place. It's terrible. Highest suicide rates are the dairymen who are going to lose it in this generation. It's terrible. Hardworking Americans trying their very best, losing it to the processor because of overproduction and prices below cost of production. Where on the raw milk side, we're doing extraordinary things to serve people with these different standards we talk about, from grass to glass. So we got the right kind of conditions for the cows to be in, the right nutrition, taking care of the people actually milking the cows, so they're really well paid, measuring the work that they do by their bacteria count, by the way, which is really interesting, and then paying the bonuses, so the better they do, the cleaner the milk is, the better. It's wonderful. Anyway, rapid chilling, testing, all those things, and then distribution, logistics to 500 stores, and taking care of people in the stores versus a processor that doesn't care about quality. So that's kind of a really quick story from literally my birth to where we are today. I also a big researcher with the International Milk Genomics Consortium at UC Davis and other institutions. And because of my interest in education, because I realized that early on, you don't sell raw milk, you teach it. Yeah. So if somebody understands what raw milk is, the role it plays, what it does to lay down the immune system gut, the gut microbiome gut, as the first food of life, that's what it is. Babies suckling the breast gets colostrum in raw milk. That's what starts the immune system. You understand all that and you train and you educate yourself about that. Then you can teach people about what it is that's causing them gut pain. What's causing them to have immunocompromise, autoimmune diseases, asthma, allergies, colds, viruses. All of those things are reduced or eliminated. Some people not completely, but dramatically reduced if you're consuming raw milk with all of its bioactives. Bioactives are destroyed in pasteurization, but they're foundational to building the immune system to be adaptive and resilient in a strong gut microbiome. So raw milk as a foundational food of life, the first food of life for mammals, builds that immune system. So if you teach raw milk, people will say, well, where do I get this food? Oftentimes, when I'm doing a big speech in front of a group of people say, I'm not going to talk about raw milk today. We're going to talk about breast milk. We talk about all the things that bring us together that we all agree with in breast milk and say, well, how can we get that? I know moms are not lined up in dairy operations to produce milk for people, but cows have been doing it for 12,000 years or more. And so have goats and sheep and horses and donkeys and camels and reindeer around the world. And they gave people a competitive advantage for whole food. And so they didn't have to hunt fish. They didn't have to gather. They could do that. They had whole food today because they had this domesticated animal. If you teach raw milk, the sale is done. People want that food. And by the way, the first comment people have about raw milk is, oh my God, it's delicious. Yeah. It doesn't have that burnt flavor. And it's filled with all these wonderful things that allow it to be easily digested, non-allergenic, and builds your immune system. So kids crave it. They don't throw it away. They drink it and they want more. So raw milk, if it's done well on the standards we're talking about, doctor, it is a home run for the farmer and absolutely a home run for the consumer.
Well, it's so great having your experience of how you're processing it, but you have that clinical background, and then you're an educator and you're a researcher, so you're a reader. I mean, you could teach at the deepest level. Anybody would want to go to the microbiome, all the specifics, where the latest research is, the history, the evolution of the systems, how they're affected with and without that benefit of milk, whether it's breast milk, and then how you're using these other sources as whole foods throughout your life. Now, I know when we talked the first time too, and you've done a great job with your background, the inspiration, but there was a little bit more inspiration to this when you were a paramedic, and you did glaze over about the dead bodies. And most people are probably thinking, you fall down the mountain when you're skiing, you get hit by a car, those types of things. But it was beyond that, the chronic illnesses that a paramedic sees every day. And what you shared with me too, this is reality, so
let me help you with that.
Yeah. From infants to adults. And
there's some pretty good emotional wounds down inside that I'm soothing now and healing now from, and getting these wonderful accolades in return of thank yous from moms that have kids that don't have allergies and asthma anymore. Well, let me talk to you about a couple of calls, the paramedic calls we had, where this happened literally all the time. I mean, once a month you'd have this or more often, where you're responding code 3, lights and sirens as fast as you can, get to the house because you got a kid that's blue that can't breathe, and their Alliopent inhaler's not working anymore, and they're unconscious, apneic, extreme asthmatic crisis, right? Status asthmaticus. And you get there and you have to literally, they're on the precipice of beginning CPR. I mean, you've got to intubate them immediately, give them epinephrine, intravenously or subcutaneously to save their life, to open up the bronchioles so they can actually start to breathe because of the reaction they had. Now, asthma, 10 kids a day die in America, 10 kids and adults die in America. That's CDC data from asthma. That's considered part of just background America, the 10 kids a day. Well, paramedics respond to those 10 kids trying to die most of the time. Well, thank God none of them died on mine. But I'll tell you what, the parents are freaking out, crying, save their life, crying. And here you are focusing on this apneic child and intubating them with an ET tube and epinephrine and saving their life and bringing them back to a pink status where they're conscious and talking or not talking if they're intubated. But the bottom line is you resuscitated them and took them back to the brink of death. Now, that leaves a little bit of a lasting impression in a paramedic. A person who really gives a damn about people is like, wow, that came damn close to dying. And the parents are hugging you and the siblings are saying, I'm a hero. It just leaves a lasting impression. And that happened repeatedly over 15 years of my life as a paramedic. So now, recognizing the European studies and how raw milk prevents asthma or reduces it greatly, let's put it that way, and chronic inflammation, and we know now that chronic inflammation drives chronic disease and autoimmune diseases. Raw milk is foundational to protecting it and preventing it and making it better. So, wow, what an interesting 2-chapter segue here of critical response to saving a freaking life and being emotionally captured in that moment multiple times, all the time. And now parents come saying, my child's no longer on corticosteroids and anti-inflammatory drugs and no longer allergic to this, that, the other thing. Their leaky gut syndrome is pretty much resolved. Their Akkermansia bacteria in their lower gut with their mucosal lining is now recovered. And by the way, did you know that the cream, the butterfat globule membrane, is actually considered a dietary fiber because of the high amount of butyrates, and the butyrates drive the Akkermansia bacteria to make the mucosal lining in the lower gut, which is so critical to the gut microbiome. And that gut microbiome mucosa is actually missing or thin in most of Americans because of the antibiotics, the lack of fiber, and all these preservatives, the sodium benzoates that kill bacteria to extend shelf life in a product, but could give a damn about gut life in the human. So you can see that the pairing in my life was pretty passionate about acutely responding and saving people's lives in an acute crisis of medicine, asthma being one of them, along with others, and now preventing them through good whole food nutrition and good, stable, developing, recovering gut microbiomes. So, wow, what a life.
This episode is brought to you by Life-Based Professional Healthy Eating Systems. We all know intuitively that the food we eat affects our shape, our health, and our performance. But every day we're inundated with new quick fix diets or gimmicks that claim magic promises and for most failed results. Nutrition really shouldn't be this confusing. Life-Based is the solution that promotes eating real food and optimizing your individual needs without fads, gimmicks, overhyped supplements, or fake prepackaged foods. Life-Based Solutions is a complete system helping anyone know what to eat, when to eat, and how much to eat. The Life-Based system offers medical-grade body composition, client education, and state-of-the-art data analytics to optimize your individual needs and achieve maximum outcomes, complete with live coaching from a credentialed professional with experience. Go to lifebasedsolutions.com to learn more and contact directly. Whether you are a client looking for coaching or you want to start your own life-based professional business, eat better, look better, and feel better. lifebasedsolutions.com. Yeah. So you doing it from that aspect, I've never been a paramedic, but, being a natural healthcare clinician. And so, a lot of natural healthcare clinicians, there's so many that are great at what I would call nutrition. A lot of that has to do more with functional lab testing and supplements, and I'm all for that. We still do those types of things. I know we put a lot more effort into real whole food nutrition, like teaching people how to eat, tell them portion sizes, not just the fact of, okay, look at your plate, put color on it, the palm of your hand. All those things are okay, but I mean, we do it to the level of if you want to get on stage for figure or you want to be bigger, faster, stronger, like those people know food more than any clinician in the world in terms of the application. And then we get the people ground boots on the ground who you're producing the food, whether it's fruits, vegetables, meat, dairy. I mean, the people who are setting the highest standards, those are the two parts of the spectrum that people know food the most. They have the most experience with hands-on application, getting it grass to glass. And then we as natural healthcare practitioners, we do the lab testing. We look at the big imbalances. We help supplements, but we are so driven food. And we do so much of that. And as natural healthcare practitioners, I do know, because I've taught way over 600 seminars and nutrition's a part, at least of many of those, as we promote how the integrated natural healthcare systems work, physical, chemical, and emotional. And there's a lot of people that would just lump all dairy together as the normal. And it's like, dairy's bad for you. Dairy causes allergies. And I'm going to show you lab tests. I've been doing these for 25 years. And we're going to show some really extreme lab tests that are very normal. I'm not extreme, like these are 1 in 100. I mean, no, these are like normal, whether you have symptoms or not. People are a mess inside because of the processed refined foods, not just driven to your symptoms, but it's just a matter of time before it does break down and even at times collapse your system. So even as a paramedic, so the clinicians that are out there, we cannot lump this. I know a lot of people are told to, and I'm not disagreed with some of the things, the molecular, we'll probably come back to this because I know we're going to deep dive with what we can just in this podcast. I know we're going to do a series together moving forward. We can't cover everything. There's so much positives to do and so much excitement. You would have so much value to teach the detail of what you do on a day-to-day level for decades to the clinicians I've taught over the years too. And but that aspect that cow's milk has nothing to do with breast milk. And so, if you have to do that, a little more sheep and goat, and I don't want to get too distracted by that, but I've had that mentality, and we do elimination diets at times, but it was because it was pasteurized milk was all we had access to. And I would get people off pasteurized dairy. It's not just it's pasteurized, but since I was a little kid, even if I drank pasteurized dairy, oh my gosh, it is a filthy, filthy food with all the differences in cow genes, the amount of milk one cow makes a day, they couldn't even make in 2 weeks, 30 years ago, the amount of antibiotics and hormones, and you're just tricking the body. It's just not, it's a filthy product is the nicest way you can say about it. So we eliminate people with that. And we never apologize, and people do a lot better. But as I have really promoted more, find the local farmers, the organic gardeners, the organic meat raisers, the organic dairy farmers. So I have a dairy farm. It's an hour from me, but it's fantastic. Their cows are right there. They know the genetics. They're raised holistically. And even in my super sick people, autoimmune diseases, allergies, off the chart, we'll get to that at a certain point. Pretty early on in care, we do still put them on raw dairy. They do amazing. So we'll probably get into that a little bit, but I just want to bounce back. You talked a lot about, as a paramedic, the emotional experiences you had saving lives in infants, but then we go to the opposite side of the spectrum of the elderly people, and it is end of life, and what you experienced walking into the house, 20 meds and junk food everywhere.
Well, you go by the bed and they're having any number of things going on, name it. Having a heart attack, stroke, maybe there's an infectious problem with an ulcer, decupus ulcer from laying in the bed, or maybe a broken bone that has kept them from being ambulated, which is kind of the end of life sign. If you break a bone as an old person, you're kind of dead in a year. Anyway, there's always a big pile of medications by the bed. And when we further investigated, which we always looked into the house, there's never any good food in the house. Farmers over pharmacies, guys. You've got to have good food if you want to have a strong body. I think it's really important that I quote this right now. This is really a key to segue, especially for your clinicians out there. I always like to see data that back up what I have to say. This is really important. This came from the NIH, CDC, Library of Medicine, 2021, December 8th, Dr. Lin, that's Tian Lin, Cornell University. And this is funded by the National Dairy Council. This study about bioactives found in unprocessed milk. Now, their quote was, these bioactives provide health benefits far beyond the basic nutritional values. So we're not talking about nutrition, we're talking about way beyond nutrition. And these bioactives include the following. Milk bioactives come from milk proteins, lipids, enzymes, functional and bioactive peptides, raw whey proteins, alpha lactoalbumin, which is a protein, immunoglobulins, lactoferrin, growth factors, glycomacropeptide, milk fat globule membrane, and milk oligosaccharides. There are more, but these are the top 12. Now, what were the functions of these bioactives in raw milk or unprocessed milk? And these are critical to understand how incredibly healing they are. These bioactives provide these health benefits: anti-hypertensive, anti-tumor, anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, antiviral, think bird flu, think COVID, think colds, think the influenza, antiviral effects. There's at least 15 of those that are antiviral functional proteins found in raw milk, by the way. Anti-carcinogenic, immunoregulatory, they control the cytokine storm, they prevent it. Prebiotic, probiotic, and postbiotic effects, remineralization, modulation of the digestive process and metabolism. Wow. Those are all the gifts you'd want to give a child or a baby to thrive in life. Well, guess what? I'm not claiming all of those are going to benefit every stage of life, but everybody I've ever known at any stage of life also has a majority of those benefits as well. So powerful things that are lost in pasteurization. These are the things that this study at Cornell studied, that they were trying to find a way to protect them, to make them into some new pill potion or patented drug. Well, guess what? We don't do that. What they found was when they took these bioactives out of their whole food matrix, they didn't work very well because they were synergistic. They were mutualistic. They worked within the matrix. The whole was better and more effective than the parts. So raw milk's got it going on with Mother Nature's blueprints. I thought I'd cite that study, which is very, very powerful.
Yeah, and I'm glad you did, because it is so important. And I know as clinicians, a ton of great information, especially the natural healthcare crowd. So, standard medicine has some advantages. Surgeons, it would be difficult to live without surgeons when surgery is needed appropriately. The standard of care before you're in a crisis situation, it's bad. It's not my opinion. It's bad. When we look at Statistica, which is an independent statistician results, when they compare the United States against the rest of the world, out of 70 countries, we are number 69 with the standard of care. That's not even how fat and diseased we are. We suck. All right. So let's just get over the fact you can't take a pill for this. You can't take a pill for that. You can if you don't want to be self-responsible. And I think those things are great. I'm glad people have those avenues. Nobody will ever convince me that at least 10% of your clientele in a clinic does not want to do better and significantly better. They just don't have the answers. So, hopefully you can use some of this information. We're all busy clinicians. You can pass this on to people. And again, we can empower people. We can have people heal when they're not in front of us. But it has been always fantastic. As we said, I love being a natural healthcare practitioner. You just regenerate the body. You provide the building blocks, you provide the energy, and God, innate and vital force and all that kicks in and does a ton. And it's not like we're just loosey-goosey. Like, we read the research, we read the physiology, we obsess on the pathways yet, but how you heal people is the act of doing. And nature has a lot of answers. Would we use certain whole foods that were raised a certain way? There's thousands of positives happening that you don't have time to explain to anybody. So as you said too, when I first started out and you didn't have all this information, especially in the whole food organic community, we were doing a lot of supplements, and you try to get people off of as much processed refined foods, where a lot of people don't even do that. They're like, oh, my patients don't even drink water, so I'm going to ignore that. And I do get it. Everybody practices different, not telling anybody how to do that. But just like there's farmers out there that are in a bad situation, really unhappy about their current situation and how they have to live day to day to make a living, there's clinicians out there too. And when we can really align people with what we're trying to do with Brain Body Fit, with people like Mark and with Dr. King and with your local farmers, like, that is a big part of what we want to do. We've got lots of detailed clinical information always, but to try to pull it back to the farm. And we did a great job with the functional medicine testing we did and getting people over ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, autoimmune diseases, chronic pain. Nobody could figure out why. Of course, asthma. I mean, we've done that forever and successfully, but when we really had the ability to implement food programs, really teaching people to eat, and even now implementing raw dairy into our protocols, there is no supplements, and we still use supplements, but it's an aspect. It's been a game changer. You're always trying to be more efficient, whether we're still doing our athletes, but we do a lot of regular clinical clientele, and nobody comes to us as the first practitioner. Like, literally, by the time they hear about us, they're like, oh yeah, it's a lot of work going to see Dr. Jerome. Well, compared to what? But sometimes it takes people a year and a half of continued suffering after 20 years of doctor hopping, and they're like, well, there's got to be an answer. And, they come to us, and we're very comprehensive in our lab testing and stuff. We'll get into that. But this is the stuff you're talking about that does the work for us. I just identify it, and then we do our part of educating and putting the consumer in touch with solutions of where you can buy these things. So great point. I think what you had mentioned there, thanks for quoting those. We want to show people that it's not just my opinion. It's not just your opinion. Like, you are living at a level of science, research, standardization, and application that people do not know even exists. Nope. And some of these global health summits you go to, you can kind of explain how you're the only farmer there, but all the PhDs, how they respond to you. I don't know if there's anything you want to say about these two research papers, just before we go forward. This episode is brought to you by PerformancePractic TV. All types of practitioners and patients who want to know more about natural healthcare love to subscribe to PerformancePractic TV. PPTV is a cost-effective, password-protected, online, extensive library of training videos for clinicians and staff, as well as general consumers looking for direction and solutions to help themselves that can be watched from anywhere on your favorite Wi-Fi device. Education and training include Dr. Jerome's 3D brain-body mapping exam and correction system. This involves identifying multidimensional asymmetries through a comprehensive approach. Once the imbalances are identified, extensive hours of various proven corrective methods are the focus, including the research, physiological mechanisms, along with hands-on instruction, including regenerative cold laser therapy, adjustments, soft tissue, when to use orthotics, pulsed electromagnetic frequency, whole body synchronous vibration, corrective clinical exercises for general consumers and competitors, as well as detailed nutrition and healthy eating to optimize your metabolism for healing or performance. Understanding the physiology and application of guaranteed healthy weight loss, muscle gain, and strength improvements for the look and quality of life outcomes you desire. In addition, there are numerous lab testing examples that apply to having more energy, hormone balance, immune enhancement, correcting digestion, brain health, understanding mechanisms and solutions to become pain-free, toes to nose, and discussing the limitless science and integrative protocols of anti-aging, including peptides, cell therapy, exosomes, and more. New content is added regularly. As long as you are subscribed, you continue to access all the materials. Subscribe today at watch.performancepractic.com.
Well, this is actually very recent information. 2000, what is it? 14, 17, what is this? 2018 on PLOS, and the other ones, I think 2000. Anyway, very recent, last 7 or 8 years.
2020 and 2018.
Yeah. So this is recent study, not back 30, 40 years ago. This is using current data from farmers that are trained by the Raw Milk Institute. I founded the Raw Milk Institute in 2011 because I realized after doing raw milk for 12 years that we needed to have all farmers. A rising tide would float all boats, not just mine. And I wanted to have a community of farmers doing really, really well, not only here in California, but all over the world. We trained 160 or 165 farmers in Great Britain at the invitation of the Food Safety Agency, which is their FDA, in Great Britain in 2018. In fact, Dr. Katrina Berg, who is the researcher on the right here, and Dr. Ton Bars from the Netherlands actually went as representatives of the Raw Milk Institute to train them in Great Britain. We found out what the problem was earlier that year, and that was the milk being produced for raw milk for human consumption was not under a separate standard for raw milk for pasteurization. So what they were doing was they were not making any money on the dairies. So what they would do is they just produce milk to be shipped off to be pasteurized, but they would take some of that milk out of the bulk tank and sell it to people. And they're getting people sick all over the place. After we trained them, no. Never combine these two standards together. Establish a separate set of standards, milk 10 cows separately, and don't let that milk go into the same processing tank and commingle with other cows or whatever. And you will have a different outcome, and they have. So we trained all over the world. This data that we're showing, these two studies here show that when you do specific practices and standards and you measure and do testing, you have a very, very, very safe product. I'm not going to suggest perfect, but very safe. There is no perfect food in the world. Pasteurization, I have data that shows 82 deaths since 1990 on pasteurized dairy products because Listeria loves a pasteurized dairy product if it can get in there because there's no competition and it's cold and lots of food. So a lot of deaths from Listeria. But when you look at raw milk for human consumption, there's been no deaths in California at all, none, in the entire history, 60 years. You look nationally, there's been maybe one death, and it was not a tested raw milk operation. It was some fly-by-night thing. So it all has to do with the standards of practice. and what we're doing to produce raw milk. So great studies, peer-reviewed, PubMed, and there's also 2 more studies out there too about raw milk that have been produced in the last couple of years. So we've got great data here. Most of the data that the FDA shows, oh, raw milk's dangerous, actually doesn't show deaths. It shows illnesses. And what's interesting is they tested from like 1998 to 2014, and they stopped doing any data testing because in 2014, the Raw Milk Institute went back to Pennsylvania and did a major whole in-service training for Amish, because a lot of Amish in Pennsylvania are producing raw milk. And after that, it was like a cliff. It dropped off in terms of illnesses in America, dropped off to very, very low levels from fairly significant levels after farmers received training. So 3 things changed raw milk outcomes: good standards, high standards, training in those standards, and testing routinely. I was back in Pennsylvania about a month ago doing a big presentation at PASA, the Pennsylvania Agricultural Sustainable Association, with the Raw Milk Institute. And when I was back there, we went and visited some of the larger Amish farms that are producing raw milk for human consumption. Every one of them was testing their milk using an on-farm lab with Petrifilm. So God bless them. They're really, really kicked butt and doing great. And they're not having problems. Exciting times. We're emerging the blueprints of life and all the natural organic basics of sunshine and all the diversity with high technology of Petrifilm testing with to make sure you're clean. So it's a fantastic marriage, but we're not processing, we're not heating, we're not killing to make things clean. We're simply doing a great job in terms of cleanliness and sanitation and chilling, to all you get is raw milk from a healthy cow. So it's exciting times.
It is. And so we have thousands of clinicians, watching this from coast to coast through all my past teachings. Probably already you're learning a little bit more about raw milk, and specifically even cow raw milk and the differences out there. There's really health benefits to raw milk. It's not kind of some of the stereotype that's been carried through that the molecular makeup of cow's milk has nothing to do with the human. So no matter what form it comes in, it's going to have difficulties. Us as clinicians, we always want to look at the exceptions. But I work on some really, really sick people, and we're just going to go through a couple lab tests here so people can kind of get an idea. And you're going to see just how extraordinarily allergic they are to dairy across the board. But we'll just kind of mention our experience with people.
Let me say one thing before you dive into that. It's really important. Dr. David Dallas at Oregon State University, part of the International Milk Genomics Consortium, presented a big research project he did a couple years ago at Cork, Ireland. And he said, qualitatively, in other words, what the functional proteins are, all the kinds of stuff found in milk from cows and people, qualitatively, were very, very similar. Quantitatively, the amounts of them were different. So the amount of protein, the amount of sugar, the amount of fats were different, but the kind were very, very similar, including the genomics. So it's very interesting how similar cows and people are qualitatively, although quantitatively quite different. Go ahead.
Yeah, but that's a good point, because I think some of the stereotypes in really elite educational natural healthcare, and this isn't even mentioned in standard of care. So these things, I think some of those stereotypes need to be re-looked at. And that's why I'm so excited to introduce you to this world, because as much as you've accomplished, there's a lot more to do. And it takes a teamwork approach of these things. And you have done so amazing getting this message out and helping people already. But as we've talked already, still how many dairy farms are shut down. So, the natural healthcare clinicians, people that are looking for raw dairy, this is a fantastic way to get better than average quality clients coming into you. They want answers. They're trying some of the things. You want to know who's in your backyard. I promise you, you want to know the organic farmers. You want to know the raw dairy farmers. You want to know the people that are raising really sustainable, healthy, clean meats, because the clients that go to them want what you do as a healthcare practitioner, but it's a two-way street. Sometimes you need to go out to them and even introduce, if you've got patients, like I'm from small town Nebraska originally, but I go back still to where I went to college there. And the last time I went, we were there on a hunting trip. And, the guy who still lives there takes us out. He's like, all these dairies are empty. And I mean, it's just one after the other. There's so many empty dairies around there. And we are a powerful group, coast to coast, of people interested watching this, but pass this podcast on to either an unhappy dairy farmer, somebody who owns a dairy farm that's closed. Of course, you're still going to get ones. There's always going to be two opinions, and it'll get pretty venomous out there, as the American Dairy Association is not going to be user friendly with the raw dairies, and we're going to get to that yet, but we got to share the information. We got to get the education out. And once you can get them in front of Mark, and if there's other resources he knows, we'll discuss before the end of this a little bit, but get them to Mark, refer them to the websites. Mark trains people on this. He takes people converting their existing dairy farm, reopening dead dairy farms. Like we set a goal when we first met, I see absolutely no reason. My goal is lots of goals with Brain Body Fit, but we want to collectively open one raw dairy that we can measure. Like we know it. We want to open one raw dairy in every single state every year. So just with our new relationship, we want 50 new raw dairies every single year to be opening up. And you are a phenomenal source and willing to do those types of things.
One of the things that we found is super critical to the success of a raw dairy is the mindset of the dairyman.
Yeah.
Who is he serving? A processor or people? If he's dedicated to people, he has a self-driving inner force of ethics and morals about doing the right thing because he's serving people. If he's got some bad habits from the serving the processor side, he's a dangerous guy.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful that they're not greed-based, but human need-based. They're going to get all the economic money they need to do well sustainably. But that's not the thing. What's really important is the socio-dynamic of the consumer connection to the farmer has to be welcomed and embraced. Because if it's not, you're screwed. The consumer should not be getting milk from that dairy because that dairyman is going for the money. There's good money in raw dairy, but he's not serving the right master, which is the consumer and their health, their family, and doing the right things and taking that money he's getting and investing in the workers that are actually making sure that the udders are clean and the chilling processes and the quality and the testing and all the things to make sure that he's making very good quality milk for his consumers or her consumer. So it's interesting to note that at the Raw Milk Institute, we have 57 raw milk listed farmers that are certified. However, of those dairymen, there's probably about 6 or 7 that are actually used to be dairymen on the processing side and became raw milk dairymen. The rest of them are not. So 50 of the 57 are not converted pasteurized milk guys. They're actually PhDs that teach biology. They're actually, we have a realtor. We have an ex-helicopter pilot from the Army. We've got an ex-paramedic, not me, but another one. We've got all kinds of walks of life of people that have experienced good positive raw milk in their lives and want it for others and bring their career paths with being able to deal with people and teaching. But they're driven by humanity, not driven by greed or the processor. And that's a key point in terms of success on raw milk dairy.
Yeah, and there's a lot of natural healthcare practitioners listening to this, so they get it. That's why they're doing this. I mean, there's a lot easier ways. I mean, if you want to get a standard medical degree, and there are people that go to a standard medical degree and then they do things more holistically, and those people are fantastic no matter how you do it. But again, I can't even imagine there'd be too many raw dairy farmers that don't have super high ethics. I would think that's because again, that's just a special person that's going to want to do and take those extra steps. So there's a passion that drives them to do that rather than just be accepted by everybody, even if it is a harder life. I mean, we look at how human behavior patterns are scratch your head and shake your head. But there is such a synergy here. And clinicians, I know there's a lot of information you may want to relearn or be re-exposed to when it comes down to true raw dairy, the quality of the raising of it, all the way from the genetics, the grasses that they eat, all the way through the processing, like Mark's done a great job experiencing, but it has to happen in your backyard. Like there's no reason every single person doing this. It's like, okay, what is in my backyard? And if it's not, how many farmers would be willing to do this if they knew about it? And that's one of our goals, just to spread the education, whether you're doing it and you want to convert, or you literally have a farm and it's like, I've wanted to do something else. I just don't know even where to start. It's like Mark is your source in terms of how to get those things going at the highest level of standard. You're not alone and you don't have to figure it out by yourself. So I would hope every clinician out here, of course, you pass this on to your clients to listen to, but especially get involved in your communities of people who are raising the food. And you are going to open up doors that you had no idea were in your backyard, and people of synergies and cooperative working of how we can all heal people. So I can't stress that enough. This is a huge subculture for us as natural healthcare practitioners to tap into.
Yep. And I would say when you were talking about supplements, they work so much better when the bioactivity and the bioavailability of the balance of the food they're consuming is present as well.
Yeah.
So raw milk is a big part of that, along with bone broths and all these other collagens and olive oils and all these wonderful things.
Yeah.
When you get all that going in the gut and then you add a supplement, it works a whole lot better than an environment that's basically is pretty stark and stripped down.
And there's so many people, and I get it, because it takes time. It's not easy to do what I do at other people, but we're super food based, and it's not a one size fits all. We don't hand people a few recipes here, eat this. I mean, everything is completely individualized. We look at you like a fingerprint, and we address your God fingerprint where your imbalances are. But there is a system. There is a system kind of looking at big picture, but big picture can still be incredibly detailed. So a lot of clinicians watching this already, if you watch this podcast early on, as this goes on for years, there'll be a lot of people, this probably motivates them. I guarantee there isn't 90% of the standard medical practitioners out there that have any idea what this test is. And sadly, even gastroenterologists, I'm sure there's a couple out there that do this, but we do so much gut brain, gut immune, gut inflammation. I mean, the gut is so important, and we're not just a gut clinic, but in terms of how we really start make a big impact. So here's a person that had really severe digestive symptoms, and this isn't a good digestive test, but it's not that bad compared to, I've done these for 25 years. I've done, I don't know, I'm not going to say I've done hundreds of thousands. I have not, but I have at least done 1,000 of these for sure. And so these are so detailed as far as how they break down the different microbiome aspects. They score them. The labs that do these, they have millions of these tests, and they have statisticians look at them. And it has been amazing since I started doing this 25 years ago. I used to live just a couple miles away from one of the premier functional labs in the entire country. So for a couple years, every Thursday, I would never practice. I would just go there and I would listen to report of findings of doctors calling in for a couple years. Every Thursday I did that. And it was fantastic. I learned a lot. Help me kind of match even certain supplements that work good for some of these different things. But so this person has terrible digestion, and these tests are really comprehensive. This one's over 65 pages long. There's another one we attached to this that's also at least another 40 pages long. But anyway, it just gives you ideas. So here, this person, they have some pretty significant microbiome negatively impact through inflammation. We all know inflammation is the underlying cause of all chronic degenerative diseases. It's also involved in asthma and just regular sprain strains. If you have too much inflammation in your body, it just overreacts, whether it's acute or chronic, and it really causes problems with your chronic development diseases as you go through that long-term inflammation. Yeah, your gut can contribute to cardiovascular disease. Cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer in the world. We are not treating symptoms here alone. We take really good detailed history. We speak into the ear of our listener. We listen to them with what they're experiencing, but I like taking a system approach, not their symptoms. But when we do comprehensive care programs, we are always, whether you've got digestive problems or not, we're 100% of the time doing these gut lab tests, because it has nothing to do with your symptoms. It could be doing with your brain health if you have depression, suicidal, anxiety. As you just look at immunity, I get strep throat every time at this year, all these things. And of course, if you have the big 24/7 365s where you've got an autoimmune response, chronic degeneration, rheumatoid arthritis, this again, 100% of the time, you can't even see me if you're not going to do these things, because no one can ever say, I went to Dr. Jerome and it didn't work. It's like, you went to Dr. Jerome and we weren't able to do enough comprehensively to where you really understood it's not just your symptoms, it's all these breakdowns in your body. So good education, lab testing tells a story specific, and it's a story specific about the person who came to you. So people love going through these lab tests. Here again, the inability to break down protein in this particular person. Now, this person's he lives really healthy too. So this is not an average person. This person largely eats organic, free range. He's actually a health coach and a real successful one, and he looks great. But for whatever reason, here again, there's some stress he's had in his life, and this person's been a physical specimen in a positive way through their life. But look at all these allergies. Like, this is literally one of the worst allergy tests I've ever had. Yet, he wasn't that sick. He had his issues with digestive problems alone, but mentally super smart, good athlete, no real chronic pain, but he absolutely positively had a fragile gut, to say the least. And so this isn't the Psychic Friends Network, and this is not just one allergy reaction. We also do a separate test for IgEs, but as we could see, this is IgA, IgG, IgG4, and how it scores the different ones. Now, he's going to be off the chart even. I mean, what does this guy eat? Well, we want to eliminate him. Here we have our dairy section, and man, he is off the chart. But we get them, best as possible. We start using supplements. We use the lowest reactive healthy foods. We combine protein, fats, carbs, fiber. We do the whole metabolic balancing things of people, and people get better. So as we're combining supplements, but this is a great score sheet, how these things affect people. Here's a different person, much more of a significant impaired score, dysbiosis right away at a 9. Inflammation is 6, maldigestion a 5. And it does. There's so many pages to these. We're not going into them, but as you can see over to the right, really low specific types of microbiome. And then we can also get this whole commensal balance, just kind of a general score, not confusing, just giving people some really good ideas, not textbook details. They don't care about that. Even us as clinicians, we want those details, but even then, you can have analysis by paralysis. And at a certain time, quit reading and start doing something like feeding people real whole food and not just a silver bullet whole food. Work on their entire food groups and buy local. So once again, when we start looking at these things, now this guy by his own term, he was just shriveling up. He was a fairly healthy person. He's well off. He's one of my clients in Arizona. As like I said, we have people from all over. I'm in Georgia, but we do a lot of this from clients all over. And once we qualify them and make sure, because you have to heal when you're not in front of me. Number one, a lot of people come to me who are never going to walk into my office. So we do these things from afar, but I can find food like what Mark's providing, and this particular person is in the area where he could buy Mark's dairy from the grocery stores. So nice and helpful, but he's been to everybody for a decade before he came to see me, and he's just shriveling away. He was an athletic person, really elite college athlete, high school athlete, and nobody understands. He's just shriveling up, weight loss. His gut is just killing him symptomatically. Stools, he said he could knock a buzzard off a poop wagon, and nobody could figure out it. He was doing all the colonics, all the detoxification things from a supplement perspective, and he was referred to me, and we really started doing food, and did more lab testing. He was going through a ton of great high-level natural healthcare practitioners. They didn't do the amount of lab testing that we did. They definitely did nothing with food. It was kind of all modalities, cleanses, supplements, colonics. And I'm not against those things. It's just food was not addressed, and proper lab testing to identify these things. So he had a fraction of the allergies that the other person said. But once again, we're going to take these into consideration. Just do an elimination diet at first. And he's never had raw milk in his life, or at least in the last 20 some years. So initially we have to restore habits. And for some people, they just can't walk out their door and get dairy. Plus they know they have horrible reactions to traditional pasteurized dairy. And I have lots of things to work on them. I don't necessarily convert them, especially a guy like this who has serious symptoms, a very chronic degenerative disease with no name or pathology. And he's been everywhere. And I'm always like, well, that's fantastic. They can't find anything seriously wrong with you. It's because there is nothing seriously wrong with you. They would find a tumor. They would find this. They would find that. But it's like your metabolism is broken. And being a strength coach where you know how to take drug-free athletes and put them on the world stage from scratch, they've never done anything, that is hard compared to getting people to reverse their health. They have to do a fraction of the intensity that it takes to eat to the level of being a world-class athlete from a natural standpoint with real food. So as we just look at these things here again, definitely not a huge allergy test that's too scary and intimidating like the first one I said, but it still allows us very specifically to deal with this person. And we gauge through all this. Those of you who are regular to the show here, we use life-based solutions. We've had shows prior to this, and this is game changer in terms of educating people and also managing what is their metabolism based upon their body composition, water ratios. Nothing is the end all be all, but this is the greatest thing. We started doing this 6 years ago. We were already good and worked hard for our clients with food. This is the biggest game changer, whether you're trying to make world-class athletes or you literally want your patients to eat better. It's not free money, but there is nothing that will help people heal and really learn is what you're promoting to people to eat. Is it working? So you, the clinician, will be standing naked in the room, because if the patient actually does what you tell them and they go backwards, you're going to have to explain yourself. And but if you do, there's a very significant training program with this. Your physiology and understanding of metabolism will go through the roof, as well as learning how to coach people, and game changer. So this is just something as we start. This is how food applies with us. And people love these things. Whether you do a health class, every single person in my clinic does this. Not everybody is on our complete healthy eating program, but 80% of everybody I see at Ebor, everybody's on our healthy eating program at least once upon a time they started, but then they learn so much they don't have to do it forever. But on day one, you get a scan. Your body composition is a huge health indicator itself. So even though you've seen just a couple lab tests we do a significant more if necessary. We don't farm people, but this data sheet right here, I could talk for 10 hours just on these types of things, but it helps us set the macros based upon their broken metabolism, their healthy metabolism. It has nothing to do with, I hear this all the time, and I'm going to get some clients on here that came who are really sick, and we're going to interview them on this podcast. And here's what I hear all the time. Well, we're going to work on your food as part of the healing process when people first come to me. And I hear all the time, I eat pretty good. And I sit there, and once we do the scan, I look at it, and it's like, you're a walking trash can. Just from a body composition standpoint, it's like, I know you think you eat pretty good, and I'm not here to throw you under the bus, but I'm sure there's some improvements we can make. And once they start changing, like their bodies just change. I just had a guy with severe rheumatoid arthritis. He's only 41 years old. He's been everywhere and super in pain. And he was motivated. And so he was really compliant, did our program. He was just in today. He's only been doing it for a month. And in his words, not my standards, he said he's 90% better already. We'll bring him on the podcast at some point, real life. It's not about what I say, it's what they say. But these are the types of things that he did this, and he really did it. He learned it. He was scared to death of what his future was going to be as a father of a fantastic family and business. But the details we get from this, and people who want to participate at that level, they can buy foods in grocery stores, and We want them to eat as much unprocessed, grass-fed, free range, whether it's eggs, organic vegetables, buy local from farmers. We encourage that, whether people are nationally or local for us. But this helps us manage. You can even eat good sources, but you still got to have a balanced diet. And you still either have to choose, basically, are you going to do glycolysis or are you going to do oxidation, which is keto, low, high fat? Okay, you got to have a plan, because metabolism has such enormous boundaries of efficiency in each one, but depending how serious you want. But you just can't hodgepodge and say, oh, I just eat what I want. That's not how you transform yourself to be a super beast, whether you're an athlete or you're a person regaining their health. You need structure. The body loves rhythms. And so we have whole podcasts just on this, but I want people to know, when we're talking in the Brain Body Fit podcast, nothing is separate. There is no topic. There is no guest. Some people may specialize. Like we have Mark here, who, again, he's a raw dairy farmer. He's not raising beef cattle, but we introduce you to those people. It's a system of people who are producers, as well as those of us who are clinicians, as well as organic gardening. We want balance. Here's another person. We're going to get done with these examples, but I just want people to know we've done this a long time. And this is also the reason why I'm so excited about what I do and how I introduce people to Mark. It's not just what I do. Like, people like Mark help me help others at a level you can never do just by going to the greatest supplement seminars and functional medicine seminars. They're great. I'm telling you to go for those things. Those are great. But when you really start implementing food, and I know it's hard, and we've been taught a lot of misinformation about dairy, especially dairy in today's day and age, if you have people doing it at the standard that Mark is doing, game changing for people's health. So here's another person, their first one. This is actually the guy with who was just withering away, I mentioned, and he was really compliant. He was great. And he also admitted he wasn't eating as good as he thought he was, but we really went. So just in 6 months, these are the changes he made on his gut. He's a long ways away. I never get to see him. I guarantee if he walked into my clinic, we probably could have helped him out even a little bit more. But big differences. And he felt fantastic. I mean, this was 6 months, but within 2 months, his energy level was improved over 50%. He was back to golfing multiple times a week, living the lifestyle. He's a coach. He's got bionic kids. So, man, he was back to being the dad he wanted. His symptoms were significantly better, and he just got better and better. And his lean body mass, and I mean, he changed it. He just looked great as well.
There's something, this is phenomenal data. It's great. But one of the things that really hits me when you're saying this is the integrity of the gut lining itself.
Yes.
The missing microbiome integrity in terms of the villi and the leaky gut. The fact that there's holes in the power patch, things are open, and food molecules and bacteria and viruses that aren't supposed to go into the bloodstream can go through that leaky gut if it's not, the integrity of the gut microbiome lining is missing. The mucosal lining plus the tissue itself. And so when you're eating these foods you're talking about, and raw milk and good meat and bone broths and olive oils and avocados and all that good stuff, the collagens, you start to tighten those junctions. You start to get the integrity of the gut microlining, microbiological epithelial tissues tightened up. Therefore, this digestive process and all these enzymatic issues going on, all these things that are happening to make the enzymes and make the vitamins and all the things inside the gut microbiome stays there. It doesn't go out into the bloodstream, which causes all kinds of reactions and chronic inflammation. So it's really important that we heal up the gut and seal up the gut and then maintain its integrity so we don't have this exodus into the circulatory system, which causes all this major allergies and chronic inflammation.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that back in. It is so important. And natural healthcare practitioners know that. But what they don't know is that dairy from cows could be super healthy, beneficial, because they're just lumping it all into what they've been taught about the molecular integrity of the typical cow's milk, but that, of course, it relates more to pasteurized. But there's a lot of people that don't even think that raw dairy would be good for people with SIBO. And there's these huge groups of clinicians, and they're helping people. They're doing it a lot supplement based. But I'm telling you, what you can apply, and I've got a lot of experience with this as well. And when we started implementing raw dairy, and sometimes again, we get that fear factor away from people. We let those reactions, especially those delayed onset reactions, get out of their body. Sometimes it's 3 months, 4 months. But once we get them on healthy eating, they're scared to death of dairy because they have been identified and they've taken themselves off of it and their body has been better. Super conservative. I mean, I'm always looking for that 1 in a million, and I haven't found them yet, but I'm looking for that 1 in a million when we're dealing with people with this sick and they are bionically allergic to milk. And when we do have them at a level where they're like, oh my God, my symptoms are so much better, and they're actually eating real food and they're cooking at home and preparing all their meals at home and taking them with them to work, and they are night and day better, whether it's 2 weeks or a month, or if they're slow learners, it's 6 months. But when we reintroduce dairy, we do it in a very small amount with standard meals that they are so comfortable with that have changed their lives. And I'm like, look, you're not going to end up in the hospital. Just drink an ounce of this raw milk, with your meal, and let's see what happens. And I haven't had one yet, but most people are like, yeah, I felt fine. And then some people are like, oh my God, like, I don't know how to explain it. It's just amazing in my gut. Like, it felt like it just soothed everything, So there's so many layers to this. You just can't stereotype cow dairy with cow dairy and the molecular structure of cow dairy. But of course, people can do what they want, but kind of been there, done that a little bit, and really excited to reconnect with the farmers, because that's ultimately when we're going to get into Maha pretty soon here after this. But I'm going to share just one more example. So this is my 41-year-old rheumatoid client who came in just, March 3rd, collected February 27th of this year. And like I said, it takes a while to get these tests back. So we put him on some general healthy eating before we ever get some of these things. And we've got so much experience, we're doing some general things to start appeasing it. But man, he is just doing amazing, life-changing, and he will be very excited to share with you on these things. Another thing that's kind of neat about these tests is it automatically shows you whether it's a prescription agent, what you're going to have a resistance to, which is an R. So even if that's what the textbook says should work, it's not going to work because how they test these people in their lab for these things. And then, of course, even the S over there is what would work. But we also look at the bottom, and we're natural healthcare practitioners. I will refer people for standard cares or specific antibiotics based upon this if they don't respond, or they really got something, or they don't respond as fast as I want them to. But that is rare, and that's more based upon the compliance of the person. But I'm not here to serve a point that nobody can take any prescription medication, though that's generally what happens, not because of my ideology, because of the care programs we put for people. And I don't take them off the meds. I always tell them, tell your medical doctor to be aware that you're going to need to start getting off some of these things, not because they're not necessary from their eyes, and I'm not offending them, but your body is going to heal and change, and they need to be prepared. And if they're not willing to do those things, I'm like, oh, well, then you leave that medical doctor and you'll go see my medical doctor who knows what I do. And they're happy working to try to get you off some of these things when you are a responsible client. So here again, rheumatoid arthritis, look at the dairy allergies this guy has. He's had such a great experience doing everything else. Now, even in the first month, we did put him back on raw dairy slowly, and he's just progressing, doing absolutely amazing. Of course, you use your own agendas. He's very gluten intolerant, as you see here too. We're with grains, but we don't get people off of all grains. So God made 2 grains for sure, just the way they were made. Sorghum and millet has no gluten, has no lectins. And whether you're a super accomplished athlete that's literally bulletproof and we couldn't hurt you even if we wanted to, we still recommend they use millet and sorghum, whether it's the grain, because it's so clean. It's such a clean carbohydrate. There's so much fiber. There's so many micronutrients. And even with these people, they make bread out of sorghum and millet. They do this, they do that. So that's the level we take different types of things, and we deal with the super sick gut linings. And I love it. I wish my entire clinic was ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, irritable bowel, I wish everybody, because they're so easy to fix if they're just compliant. But that's a little bit of how we're tying in the clinical aspect. And on a big level now, I know you have some response, and let's just talk about MAHA a little bit. Now, whether we have direct connections to RFK or that, but all of us, I would think there's a lot of natural healthcare practitioners on this. There's a lot of consumers we want this to get out to. Please, practitioners, share this with all your patients. Share it with local farmers, because MAHA isn't when RFK removes the dyes out of processed foods. Now, that's great, and that is going to help a certain population. There's no doubt, but there is not one food you should eat ever in the past 30 years and the next 130 years. There is not one food that you take the dyes out of that you should eat anyway. It's all crap, okay? So just remember that. We don't have to wait for RFK. We don't have to wait for the food companies to stop their low standards and sadly intentionally hurting us. We don't need to wait for that. You have access right then and there, so doing these types of things. So let's kind of share your ambitions with MAHA going forward.
Well, in June of 2024, which is coming up on 9 months ago, I was visited by Shanahan, and she was the vice presidential candidate under RFK. And she and I had a great time here on the farm. We spent 6 hours. She did a podcast with me. She did an interview with me. And she asked me, can I be an advisor to RFK if he becomes president for the FDA to advise on this human consumption raw milk, because he's one of our customers. So Nicole and I got build a relationship. That evolved into when he became nominated and then now appointed and commissioned to be the secretary of the HHS, the Health and Human Services, where they actually said, hey, Mark, we want you to be an advisor to the FDA on raw milk for human consumption. So they did a background check. They got the application. They had me write a proposal. And RFK actually texted me about 6 weeks ago saying, when Dr. Marty McAfee is confirmed at the FDA, we'll be having a meeting. So I'm expecting that to happen sometime in the next coming weeks or month. Because RFK is one of our customers in Los Angeles, as well as Nicole Shanahan. So it is an interesting time because I think there's a lot of initial work he's doing right now to kind of thin out the crowd and find out who's his friend and who's not. I know he's a gut microbiome guy because he selected McAfee, who's definitely a gut microbiome guy, and Jay, I can't pronounce his last name, over at the NIH. So Jay is a outspoken Stanford immunologist. And McAfee is a surgeon who's really taken the other path, which is the gut microbiome being an important part of medicine. So I think we got a good team there, but they're having to kind of struggle through the initial extreme FDA advocacy for pharmaceuticals, because the DNA is so deep in the FDA. It's driven by pharmaceuticals. What is it, 50 or 60% of their budget? It comes from pharmaceuticals that drives the research to approve pharmaceuticals. So you're talking about a major problem there, where food is not medicine at the FDA. In fact, the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act says only an FDA-approved drug is approved for any medical claim. And if you claim a food is going to make somebody happy or somebody healthy, it becomes a drug and must be regulated. So this bullshit's really deep.
Yeah.
And that's where RFK is actually getting through the initial challenges there to thin out the crowd and get a mindset of, we're not going to get rid of pharmaceuticals. We're not going to get rid of vaccines. But they cannot be the principal concept of making America healthy. The principal concept is going to be whole food nutrition in all of its splendor. But yes, we need to have vaccination. We need to have pharmaceuticals. But it can't be the 100%. It's got to be at its appropriate level for those that need it. And this transition is going to take a while. You don't make America healthy overnight. I'm talking, there's a major amount of problems we got. And are we talking about every American or just the rich American? Yeah. We're talking about kids. We're talking about adults. We're talking about just stores. There's a lot of consciousness to be talked about here from me as a humanitarian regarding this, because, food nutrition in schools, critical. to how the brain works, the serotonin, the dopamine function in the gut to the brain, the gut, lung, gut, brain axis, all that stuff going on if you want to have healthy kids. Healthy kids are the next generation. If they're going to think better and do better and eat better and have healthier children when they grow up, it starts when they're young. It starts when young parents decide to get pregnant. And how are they going to be fertile? And how are they going to gestate? How is their gut going to work to feed that baby as it grows for 9 months to become the next generation? So there's a very big conversation here to be had, and a lot of interest at the FDA, which are not aligned with that concept because they come for pharma, which is get them to go to the doctor to take a drug. That's how we cure America. Well, that's not. We're at 26% GMP right now at pharmaceuticals and the medical paradigm costs. In 1962, 63, we're at 6%. So we've gone from 6% to 25, 26% of our gross national product is associated with illness. And we got worse outcomes. So I think that RFK's picked the right fight. He's picked the right mountain to climb, the most important these things to talk about. But it's not going to be easy, and I can't wait for an opportunity to assist him by giving the FDA some additional direction on where to go with raw milk for human consumption.
Yeah, it's going to be so exciting. And I just want to stress the point. RFK's busy, people. Don't wait for him. He can't do more.
No,
it is so amazing, the medical doctors that have stepped up, that truly have risked everything. I mean, we as natural healthcare practitioners, we're a bunch of crazy people swinging the sword every single day. We know what we got into 25, 40 years ago. It hasn't changed for us, and that's just what we do. Now, when we look at the people that are coming on board, man, they got to root out some poison. There's a lot of bad agendas, a lot of bad intentions, but I want to stress, RFK's busy. And not that we're not busy. We don't need him to start helping our clients eat better. We don't need him. It's already legal to find the raw dairy farmers in your area, ask them a few basic questions. I know we're going to be doing more together. Whatever. We'll make a list to send out to the thousands of clinicians listening to this. Hey, if you got raw dairy in your area, ask them a few basic questions. If they answer it right, I'm sure it's going to be such a small percentage of people that you would find that would not qualify to be healthy raw dairy, so, and it shouldn't be hard to figure those things out, especially as talented natural healthcare practitioners. But I just want to stress that fact. There is nothing holding us back. Nothing. There's nothing holding us back right now to move full speed ahead at a high level. People like RFK, government policies, yeah, that is going to affect a certain population better when they can change those regulations. But right now, there isn't enough natural healthcare practitioners in the world. There's not enough raw dairy farmers in the world. There's not enough organic dairy farmers in the world that are available right now to us to help the people that are looking for this. And there's a lot of people looking for it. So here again, as you're the clinicians, put yourself in your community as that person. Not only be a great clinician with functional medicine and supplements and adjustments and modalities and lab testing, like be that person, but for those of you out there, especially in the strength and fitness world, like I said, we got things tapping out through, the hardcore carnivore crowds, the Spartan racers, the strong men and strong women, the bodybuilders, the figure competitors, like we're kind of linked with all those. And not as close as we want in some instances, but it takes you guys, like, what is out there? People who want to eat better, who are already trying to eat better. This is next level type of stuff we're talking about. So it is the information age. It is the technology age. And when we combine technology like you're doing with a lab right on your farm, we're combining that information that you've acquired. You're a phenomenal teacher, and you've done decades of that to make your impact. We all can kick this up. I mean, there is no doubt. What's been done in the last 25 years, we can double just in this next year, as there is a consciousness change out there. People are becoming more aware. They are looking for more alternatives. And I'm telling you, natural healthcare practitioners, you got to step up with your communication. Sometimes not your skill level, but we have to get to communicate better with our communities. So that is really exciting what you're going to be doing with that. We're not rushed for time or anything. We've done a lot right now. I don't know how much deeper you do want to go into the gut biome, any health benefits. We want people to understand where they can get your products. And, not everybody, but even me, I'm clear in Georgia. So we'll touch that in a little base. But is there anything else through immunity, health, technology, science, research, MAHA you want to talk about before?
I would say this. I would say if you're visiting a local dairy that's producing raw milk for human consumption, there's a lot of questions because I don't know where that dairy is. I don't know if he's being regulated, not regulated. And that may or may not have a lot to do with their food safety, because I know some regulated dairies that are horrendous. I know some unregulated dairies that are fantastic. So it all has to do with the consciousness of the farmer, what they're doing and what they're investing in, so I would really go to the farmer with an open heart, ask them questions. And that list of questions could be found at the Raw Milk Institute, how to find your local raw milk dairyman, and invite them to become part of our community. It's zero cost. In fact, we give grants to farmers. There's 4.5 hours of actual video they can watch online. We trained all kinds of people to do raw milk production effectively to serve their local community. So rawmilkinstitute.org, thank you very much. It's a great place to start as a consumer to help your farmer to become the best farmer they can be for you. And in doing so, they will thrive and you will as well. So that's a good place to start. And I would end with that because I recognize that it was going to be very important for raw milk to be organized and collectively a community of farmers doing well together. And that's what Raw Milk Institute and other farmers outside of Raw Milk Institute, they're following our guidelines, are working together and serving our consumers. And I'm really jazzed about it because their consumers become my consumers. My consumers become their consumers. People move around. They're looking for high quality raw milk. So the more we teach together, the more we thrive together. It's really exciting. I bring home the bacon from these big conferences and share and teach. And then they teach their consumers and they get growing markets. And those people move to my markets and my market's growing. And my people move to their area and their market's growing. It's all farm to consumer. Food is medicine. And it's fantastic because it works. And another thing, Jerome, to all your buddies out there that are naturopaths and chiros and whatever they're doing to help people with nutrition and whatever they're doing, body function, it makes you look really good as a doctor. Because I tell you what, you get this straightened out and the gut's working, your patient is like feeling like you're a god.
Yeah.
Because you are using God's, Mother Nature's blueprints in their bodies to resolve their challenges, because we've been doing some ungodly things with ourselves for a long time here, taking advantage of that for money, for the sugar and the diets that have all these preservatives and long shelf life stuff that has nothing to do with gut life. And so we're getting back to the Mother Nature's blueprints that were intended to function in our bodies so we can thrive and be sustainable in life. So it makes you look really good as a doctor.
And then it even goes deeper than that. Big pharma, is comparable to big agriculture. And it is shameful how the soil has been taken care of and the low levels of genetically modified corn, but the depleted nutrients in the soil. And when we start talking about bringing on here the Frank Kings of the world, and he gets to spread his message, and he also helps people become ranchers at the level that he's doing it. And we're looking at the raw dairy, impact here. And if people want these raw dairy farms, majority of the times they have their own herd, they're pasture raised in their own, they're taking care of the land and the soil as well. This has such a huge impact. Like, we are not doomed. This whole concept that the planet is overpopulated is absolutely ridiculous. The whole concept that CO2 is the reason that is so silly. And that's a whole different podcast for that. But one of my goals is I am, from a small farm. We were not organic farmers, but having a huge appreciation for the land, living on the land, and knowing how we can impact this. It's also integrated. And we as a natural healthcare practitioners, you might not be opening up your own farm. Hopefully in time we motivate people to at least grow a tomato plant. That's every single patient I have. It's like, no, you need to grow a plant. And if your plant dies, you owe me $1,000 extra, because you got to get connected with what reality is, and we help them out. It's not hard. And they'll find out it's easier to grow 100 tomato plants in 6 months than it was that first tomato plant when they have no idea. It's like, it grows when you're not even in front of it. It's all about prep work. And, farmers are so great at these types of things, but they have to be taught too. And we can motivate them and we can motivate our communities. It's great going to, farmers markets, and you're going to find some real special people. But there's also websites out there, such as here. I even have here, the listed farmers here. There's, you only said 57, 60. I know, like I said, you're doing the standard of standards. So what you're doing is teaching the highest level, but there's a lot more raw dairy farmers. I think I looked at a different website one time. I think just in Georgia, we had like 65 raw dairy farms that were under a different label per se. So, there's thousands across the country, but there's not near enough. It is just scratching the surface of what's needed right now, but it doesn't just stop with the raw dairy. Like, it really affects the ground. It affects the community. And we're ready to go. RFK Jr. is busy. Don't wait for him. If we do 10% of what RFK Jr. is doing right now, man, we need to help him out on the outside as well. And Nicole Shanahan, and thank goodness for them. And the medical doctors stepping forward, somewhat risking their career. It's a lot easier, being a surgeon than going to the FDA and fighting this fight. So thank you very much to those people.
I would add one more thing. Consider this RFK position is kind of a gateway to do what we need to do now. Yeah. Because I don't think you're going to see a lot of pushback from the FDA pushing against what we're talking about. Maybe a year ago, you get a lot of that crap, but not now. So this is a gateway to really seek the opportunity to do better because we know better. And once we grab a hold of that opportunity and we grow, we're going to see a lot of people coming back saying that worked. And they're going to tell other people. And so there's a self-propagating success of what we're doing. So good stuff.
It is. It's fantastic. Now, again, your other company, the one, your 1,000-acre farm, rawfarmusa.com. Obviously, you're in 500 or more grocery stores in California. Is you have a contract with Sprouts, as I understand. But why don't you say, so Sprouts people can get X amount from, and I'm sure you have some subsidiaries, some mom and pop places.
Sprouts has got like 130 or 140 stores in California, and we're the top selling dairy product in those stores. But we're also in 400 other stores in California as well. Mom and Pops, the Air One, the Edelese, the Nugget Markets, the Lassen Markets, all over the place in California. And we really, really support our stores, and we support our consumers. And we always take phone calls from our consumers if they have any questions about anything. We are there to answer that phone call. Most big processing companies don't have a number you can ever call the farmer. We talk to the consumers all the time. So we have that farm to consumer relationship. Plus we tour on the farm so people can come see where their milk comes from. They can actually see the cows and see the cows. And that's really important to us, is that farm to consumer connection. So Raw Farm USA, that's my profit hat. That's my CEO position. The next generation, my son Aaron and my daughter Kaylee and her husband Josh and others in the family have really seized and taken this thing and run with it. So I have time to talk to you and educate. But it's a phenomenal thing because we are sharing what we know with other farmers, because we believe that a rising tide floats all boats. And we need to have a market that's well organized, driven by consumers' passion for health. And the farmers, consumers, that's all a beautiful couplet of farm to consumer versus farm to processor, lost. And then God knows what happens to the consumer because the farmer is not connected and not really caring, because why would they care? They don't know them. They don't know anybody. All they know is the processor's not paying them enough. So very exciting to actually share our success with other farmers so we can have success across America and other countries as well.
Yeah, I'm going to send a challenge out there to the natural healthcare practitioners watching this. Get to know what's in your county and have a relationship with these people. And if there's nobody there, how far away is it? Like right now, like I even live in the dairy capital of Georgia, and there was nobody listed. I'm sure, I know there's some people here. I know some pretty conscious people that live locally. And like I said, we have good relationships. We got a fantastic organic farmer just 5 miles away from us. He's great, but I drive an hour for my raw milk. And so and it's worth it to me and the different products they have. But just getting to know those people, they're such great people and the efforts that they're putting into it. And when there is a big gap in a hole, then once you become conscious of that, let's fill that hole. Let's find people that can motivate and do these things. So that there's just so much potential that we can do as people as well. Now, so obviously you're not shipping your milk to Georgia. Now your cheeses, though, those have a little bigger radius of shipment and things you can do. So
we're in about 1,200 stores nationally. HEB has several hundred stores, a couple hundred stores down in Texas and even in northern Mexico, where our raw cheeses go. And an interesting story about our raw cheeses, we were on a Zoom call with the FDA about 2 months ago, and there was 18 people on this Zoom call. It was amazing how many FDA people were there talking to us about our raw cheeses. They called our raw cheese a gold mine for research because all of the hundreds of other brands of raw cheeses that they had been thermalized. Thermalization is a process by which you take the milk and you cook it basically up to pasteurization temperature or close to it. And then you're allowed to call it raw because you didn't actually pasteurize it because you don't own a pasteurizer's license. So of all these hundreds of brands of raw cheeses in America, we're the only one that never heated the milk above body temperature. So it was completely filled with all of its bioactives, its biodiversity, enzymes, everything. And they wanted to research ours because they would know what was in raw cheese, because the other ones, you'd had no idea because they've been, quote, pasteurized or thermalized, as they call it. Because the word raw is not defined in America. The word pasteurized is, but raw is not. So you can do whatever you want in raw. So trust your farmer, know your farmer, ask what the cheese temperatures are in the cheese vat to know whether you're getting the alkaline phosphatase enzyme, which is very anti-inflammatory. Part of the French paradox study by J.P. Lawls back in 2014 was it probably wasn't the wine, it was the 2 pounds of cheese everybody ate every week, which was truly raw. So interesting. It's just a lot of science, a lot of stories behind all this, but know your farmer, know your food. Food is medicine. Your gut, 80% of your gut, that's where your immune system is. And 60% of the bioactives are carried on the raw fat. So that's where it's at, raw fat. It's anti-inflammatory, it's fantastic. So that said, I've got to go. It's about an hour and 45 minutes. We've been rocking it, buddy.
It has. Everybody look for that brand right there at the top of the page, family owned Raw Farm. That is the label you'll see on a variety of products. Even if you're on the East Coast, check out some of the grocery stores, check out Sprouts. Maybe there's his brand of cheese in there at least. And we look forward to helping you spread this message, grow it. It's going to be really interesting what happens next year, the year after that. I look forward to following up with you, Mark. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks to your whole family. Go to the websites, rawfarmusa.com, as well as rawmilkinstitute.org. These are libraries of information. There is so much great stuff, so much energy. I know you guys are also on social media, a lot of high energy, a lot of recipes, a lot of ways to utilize this in your life. And that's really important, making it practical, making it useful. Mark, thank you so much. I look forward to the next one we're going to have as well. And
I look forward to having some progress reports on what's going on with Maha, as well as what's going on in other places as well.
Yeah, and especially the research and specifically what you guys are doing. Thanks again, everybody out there. Have a great day and be Brain Body Fit. Thank you for listening to the Brain Body Fit podcast, where we are dedicated to helping doctors and clients integrate clinical evaluation and performance enhancement. Please like and share this episode with someone who wants to empower their own health and actively participate in the health revolution of the growing millions. Epic changes are real. Visit us at PerformancePractic.com, where you can explore premium selected products and services that we have used to change the lives of thousands in our clinic and seminars for decades. Follow us on our socials. All the links are listed in the podcast description. If you are interested in personalized health programs and want to work directly with Dr. Jerome Rerucha, schedule a paid consultation to apply for starting a 3-month professional supervised healthy eating program. Also available are individual comprehensive restorative care program options with additional lab testing and services. Head over to PerformancePractic.com or simply click the link in the description to learn more and apply.